Hey, good morning everyone, Tractorman 44 here. Hey, remember a couple of days ago I pushed that 1010 out of the resting spot over there, got into it just a little bit this morning. I haven't tried turning it over yet. I don't know if it's stuck yet or not, but I had to go ahead and install a temporary gas tank because the inside of this thing is just completely rust. And I got my temporary tank on. I did clean up the battery terminals, put a good 12-volt battery in. So now I'm on to the throttle, making sure the throttle is going to work, and guess what? The throttle, through whatever's up under here, whether it's a friction disc or whatever it is that's up inside here is probably froze, because I can go ahead and wiggle this stuff all the way back here, and I can see the governor linkage move. And I also found a broken spring that goes right back here from the governor arm to the carburetor. So this is something that'll have to be addressed pretty quickly. But at any rate, I'm getting ready to see if this thing will go ahead and at least roll over. Keep your fingers crossed. At least it's rolling over, but there's absolutely no discoloring or any type of heat waves or smell even coming out of the exhaust. So we're either not passing gas or not having spark, or a combination of both. So I think the next order of business, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the distributor cap, see if we got any fire over there at the points. We had good strong spark at the points. So I went ahead and pulled out a spark plug. I've got no fire at the spark plugs. There's also no fuel on the spark plugs. So I strongly suspect we've got a little bit of an issue with the coil. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pull the carburetor off and take a quick look at that. Typical little Marvel shovel carburetor. That linkage down in here I'm going to have to get loose first. Well guys, usually when the gas tank is just as nasty looking as it is, you expect the carburetor to be just as bad. But just looking inside here, you can see this thing is just filled with rust. So we're going to go ahead and pop this thing apart in there and see what we can come up with. Probably put a few cycles in the ultrasonic parts washer. Well, as you guys can see, I got the carburetor apart. But what I use on carburetor cleaners is the ultrasonic parts washer. It's just a cheap little one from Harbor Freight. But I keep old chemical dip or chem dip from O'Reilly's or from any of the local supply houses. It's a Berryman product. But what I do is, because this stuff is getting really expensive, it's up to like $39 a gallon now. I keep these old ones because I do it in phases. I use the old, worst contaminated chemical dip or chem dip to get the carburetor clean the first time, get all the smudge and nasty stuff off. Then, as I clean that stuff up, then I'll go ahead and put it for the final dip in a brand new can or one that's reasonably new, so that I don't contaminate that can excessively quick. If I did that, I mean, in 2 carburetors, that can would be just as nasty as what these are. Now, one thing to bear in mind, this thing is plastic. This ultrasonic is plastic, and especially the clear spot is really susceptible to frosting if you drop any of the chemicals on it at all. So be very careful and try to not make any drops anywhere on it at all. Even if you wipe it off right away, it's too late. Just that quick. But you can see there's 4 buttons here that operate it. You just have an on and off, a set, and TC, which stands for temperature control. If you hit temperature control, it'll control it to an internal thermostat that's not adjustable, as I understand, and the red light will indicate. That's indicating that it's heating and warming up your solution. And then, of course, the green light over here means it's ready to go. And 180 seconds is typically what pops up. But to initiate, you just push start. And you can see that the time indicator is definitely going down. So we have roughly 3 minutes of this particular cycle, and then we're going to check and see what it looks like, and then repeat as often as necessary. You can see it's really discolored the paint. It's about ready to just blow right off of there. John Deere green is now yellow. Well, you get the idea, and you can tell it's done a pretty doggone good job for just being in there 3 of those 180-second cycles. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this all up, and then we'll be right back. Well, guys, I did it again. I get so involved in getting something going, I completely forget to turn the camera on and everything. But anyway, I'll catch up to you real quick. I'm in the process now of locating the rest of the holes under here so that I can actually make sure that they pass gas through the orifices or the openings that they need to pass gas through. So once we get done with that, then of course we'll get the venturi cleaned up and get that installed. But right now, I've got to locate these holes right here. If it's off a little bit, I'll just go ahead and make it a little bigger hole. Kind of messed that up and got lucky. That's dead center. That's just right exactly where it needs to be. Get some captive screws in place to keep it from moving too awfully bad. But hopefully you can see that right there. It's dead center. So there's another passage right directly behind that one. I can order a gasket kit or a carburetor kit, but I don't want to wait 3 or 4 days to get it, so I'm going to try to go ahead and get it running with just this temporary repair. If it runs good enough, I won't have to use that kit. I think all the parts and pieces are ready for assembly. Here's my new homemade gasket. Probably not quite as good as what a factory gasket or a manufactured gasket would be, but it's going to be okay to get this thing running. I've done this temporary on quite a number of other tractors, and those tractors are still out here running, so this may or may not be temporary. So I'm going to go ahead and reassemble this, then we'll come back and we'll slip her on the tractor, then work on the electric problem. Not too awful bad. A lot better than it was when we got started. And so now that we got the carburetor back on looking halfway decently, it's time to give attention to that electrical issue, because it's going to be kind of hard to field test this up in here and try to get it on film. I'm going to show you the basic resistance field test over here with an ohm meter and also a coil that I know is actually good. That way you can see what it is behind what it is that I'm doing. Now I know many of you guys know the electrics on a tractor much better than what I do, but the basic explanation is this. There's essentially two circuits in the coil. There's a primary circuit and there's a secondary circuit. The primary circuit is the plus and minus right here, which is what gets your applied voltage, your 12 volt if it's a 12 volt system, or 6 volt if it's a 6 volt system. Well, that'll actually go to there, and through induction, through the magic of how that coil is wound internally, it'll create that explosive or super high secondary voltage out of the center point right here. The center point what actually goes to your distributor, and that's where that high voltage then passes through the contact points and gives fire to the spark plug, of course. The basic circuit here is the plus and the minus coil. That should be somewhere between 0.2 and maybe 3.5 ohms. Okay, so what you like to do is use a very good or reliable ohm meter. You can use a cheapie, it'll get you in the ballpark, but this is a very good fluke ohm meter, and use it in an auto ranging scale or put it in on a low scale to measure that low ohms. So all you do is just go ahead and put one terminal on one. Hopefully you can read that. It says OL, which means infinite resistance because there's no connection. And we put it on the other one, and it'll immediately go ahead and read the amount of resistance that's in that primary coil. This one's reading just a little bit high. It's balancing out at about 4.1 ohms. That's still going to be okay. It's not that far out. So at any rate, the secondary circuit is between either one of these two plus or minus posts and the center post where the coil wire comes out of. So go ahead and leave your one post connected, and this should read somewhere between 6,000 and 20,000 ohms depending on how hot the coil is. And so make your connection to it and read it. It has 9.58 kilo ohms, which is 9,580 ohms, which is a little bit on the average side of where it should be between 6,000 and 20,000 ohms. What I'm going to do then is go ahead and perform this test on that old coil that's on the tractor. Now, just because this primary read just a little bit higher than what I expected, I read it multiple times this morning, and this thing reads consistently 1.4 to 1.6 ohms on the primary, not where it balanced out yesterday at 4 ohms. We have a good reading on it now for certain. So now to go ahead and check the existing coil, I went ahead and disconnected electrically right here, and I'm reading 1.9 ohms on the primary circuit. Then I stuck my punch where the coil wire connects and went to this particular terminal, and I read 11 kilo ohms or 11,000 ohms. So this primary and secondary coil is good. So why are we dropping voltage? Why are we not getting enough power to fire the spark plugs? I went ahead and pulled every one of these wires off, like I said. Then I sanded all the connections, removed the coil, and went to the grinding wheel with the buffer on it and buffed those connections and put them back together. Cleaned the internal connections here on the coil and all the way down here on the distributor. Cleaned those as well, and even the battery negative connection to the frame of the tractor. That's where we're at right now, and we're going to go ahead and turn this thing over and see if we have any spark, see if we can get any life out of it. Now, I'm not anticipating a rapid or a quick start. Still got to choke it by hand. I don't have any choke linkage hooked up, so there's going to be some variables. So let's just see what happens here. Well, that's good sign, but I just remembered something. I don't have a governor spring on it, so I'm actually trying to fiddle this governor by hand. The governor spring was broke, and haven't had an opportunity to come up with anything yet. Well, that's real good. I think a lot of that has to do with the governor. Okay, I got to stop and do something with the governor. I can't do the choking, the throttle, and the governor linkage all at one time with only one hand. But hey, it does sound like it's going to run okay. Let's give her one more shot. See what happens here. So actually I'm quite tickled with this. So now you know you're not really supposed to start these tractors standing beside them. You got to make sure they're in neutral if you do insist on doing it, especially on a tractor that you're unfamiliar with. And this one here I'm definitely unfamiliar with. I found two things so far. There's a tiny drip on the power steering unit right up here coming off the very bottom, and then also if you look right up here on the radiator cowl going around the fan blade, there's a little bit of moisture there. It's actually got a tiny leak in that upper radiator hose. It's a little tiny dribble there. I kind of suspected there was going to be a problem with the radiator simply because it took 2 gallons just to get the radiator all the way up to the top. So if it lost that much the last time that it was used, that means that it's going somewhere. It definitely got a little bit of a leak in 2 places. Other than that, it sounds pretty good. So at any rate, I think we can consider this a success. And you know what? I think this is the end of this one here. And for now, this is Tractor Man 44, and I'm out here, guys.